Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of The Push with Nick and KP. I'm KP. Nick is here in attendance with me because today we have got something a little bit special. We're going to be going through NXT this past week, so this is last night's edition of the weekly show. This was the Tuesday 16th edition of NXT in September, and it was NXT Homecoming. So expect a lot of old faces in this one, returns, people coming back in, and just basically being part of the show and sort of blending in with the current day NXT. It's a nice little show. There's a lot to go through, so let's get started. First and foremost, we would open up with Triple H. Obviously, he used to run NXT, back when it was the black and gold era, and, prior to that as well. So, the man had a lot of history with the company. He'd open up saying how special NXT is and how special Full Sail is, which is where this episode of NXT is, where the home of NXT used to be for so many years. He would basically take time to talk about the fans and say, how they're the reason why NXT is still here today, as big as it is, as strong as it is, and stronger than it ever has been, really, he said. He goes on to talk about, how, the fans have turned it into an undeniable Raw, and that their passion has allowed NXT to take over. Obviously, paying homage to those takeovers in the past, the big events. He would thank the fans. Before then, Shawn Michaels comes on down to the ring, the current man who is at the helm of NXT. So there were the past and the present there for being in charge of the brand. HBK would say that him and his NXT team are ready to steer the ship into the future. But Triple H sort of, says to Shawn Michaels, maybe in a joking manner, what would happen if I say, I want to come back? HBK would say that, maybe if that were the case, then there would be a very big problem that we'd have on our hands. We then get William Regal, who would come on down to the ring. He used to be the NXT general manager for many, many years. Very iconic with NXT, particularly one thing that he used to say, which he would say in this segment as well. He would basically say there's only one way to settle this, and that would be War Games. My best impression of William Regal. Take it as you will. Anyway, as William Regal was basically just enjoying himself, Charlotte Flair will come down to the ring, come down to the arena. One half of the WWE Women's Tag Team Champions scheduled for the opening matchup of the night. And she would be soon followed by Alexa Bliss as well. They would basically tell Hunter and HBK that, no matter who's in charge around here, the women run the place. And the women have always been, one of the biggest parts of NXT. They've always been at the helm. And, even modern day now, they've got one of the greatest women's divisions probably in wrestling, maybe ever, whatever. But, that's obviously up for debate. Regardless, the women run NXT. We would then get our opening matchup scheduled to take place right there, and that would be Alexa Bliss and Charlotte Flair defending those women's tag team titles up against the Cullings, Tatum Paxley, and Izzy Dame. And this would be a fun matchup to kick things off. Get the crowd pumped, ready to go, and just really just sink their teeth into the opening match of the night. It would be a pretty routine tag team match, nothing really too special to talk about here, but it was nothing overly bad either. I think Tatum Paxley and Izzy Dame showed real signs of promise, and nice continuity as a tag team here. And then, they had that sort of like heelish edge to them, just sort of like trying to get underhand tactics to win those tag team titles. But in the end, it was a expected result. No shocks here. Alexa Bliss and Charlotte Flair would retain the WWE Women's Tag Team Championships. And, they would defeat the Culling in the process. So, not a bad match to kick things off. And that would be the first of our back-to-back tag team matches at the start of the show. We would then get Trick Mellow Gang going up against DIY. So maybe you could say, like, one of the OG sort of tag teams in in NXT history being DIY, Tommaso Ciampa, Johnny Gargano, and maybe a more recent tag team / team that sort of like feuded with one another, had a very big feud, a couple of years ago, Carmelo Hayes and Trick Williams. And this would be a really fun match as well. We'd have Gargano and Ciampa coming down to their original themes in NXT. Which was really, really cool. Loved hearing those again. It's been a while, so that was nice. But once the action started and stuff, it was basically just business as usual. It was a nice tag team match. There was a nice blend to the contest. Carmelo and Trick showed signs of, teaming back up together and, nice little mesh between the two of them. And there's a couple of moments where, maybe we thought that Trick might have been, sizing up Carmelo Hayes, but actually instead, he sold us all for a loop and would, quickly go and take out Johnny Gargano instead. But it was a nice little swerve in the matchup. Eventually, it gets to a point where Carmelo Hayes is in the ring, and you've got, I think it's Johnny Gargano in there with him as well, and you've got No, you got the Miz on the outside who just comes along to surprise Gargano, hits a skull crushing finale, sends him into the ring to where Mello is waiting, and then he hits the nothing but net, and that allows Trick Mello Gang to get the victory. Trick looking a little bit out of sorts, maybe not expecting the the interaction there between the Miz and helping Carmelo Hayes, but obviously that's been the main staple of main roster, so it does make some sense to us. Going into the next match of the night, we'd have our first singles title matchup, and I think the only one actually. This would be the NXT North American Championship contest, which will see Ethan Page put his gold on the line against a returning Tyler Breeze. So Tyler came up last week out of seemingly nowhere, just came up and just because why not? And you would get a championship match the following week here at Homecoming. And this was a fun match. I haven't seen Tyler Breeze in action in a long, long time, probably a few years, going back to when he teamed with I think it was Fandango. As the Fashion Police, and that was a while ago. So this was great to see him back in action. He's still great, still very, very skilled within the ring. Hasn't really lost a step. You couldn't tell that he'd been out of action for a number of years. And I thought he looked really, really good. Didn't look second fiddle to Ethan Page at all. Had a very competitive matchup, very back and forth, and pushed Ethan Page to some limits in this contest. Eventually, though, did catch up to him in the end. Ethan Page, getting the victory via the twisted grin. And he would be all smiles at the end of the matchup. He'd be staring down the Latin American champion from AAA as well. So he was at ringside. That was a bit of an interaction there, a bit of history going back to Worlds Collide this past weekend. Just maybe setting up something, maybe going down the line with those two perhaps. But Nick, lots to talk about. Our first half of NXT. I could rattle on forever. What did you make of it all? There's so much to discuss.
Yeah, a really fun episode, and particularly I loved the way they opened with the show and the kind of the history and showing all the moments of NXT. I thought that was a lot of fun to see. So even for me, it kind of gave me like the warm fuzzies. So someone who was more so in the grand scheme of things a PLE viewer instead of a weekly show dedicated viewer like yourself. So when I was watching that, I was just thinking, this makes me feel this way. So I can only imagine how it makes someone like you feel, who'd kind of been there, since day one. I thought that was really cool to see. Papa H and HBK. I'm not really sure. I'm curious to get your thoughts on that when you come back on. If I had to look because I was curious, like, well, Triple H kind of teasing to come back if that was an actual like just a joke thing, or I've seen a lot of reports saying that HBK is set to have double knee surgery, so probably will be out a while if Triple H is planning on coming back down to NXT for a bit. Or I've also seen bits where maybe William Regal could take the helm for a bit. So curious to see if all that any kind of comes into fruition. And further, with obviously William Regal coming down to say War Games, if they're planning on any sort of like NXT versus main roster kind of friction War Games potential. I'd love to see that. The Survivor Series with NXT was one of my favorites of all time. But further, and on that note, I think this is the best place to bring it up. Probably 10 to 15 times. NXT Vic or Ava or Booker mentioned TNA kind of blowing up on social media. So not happy about something that occurs later on in the night. So possibly maybe working in a War Games match with TNA and NXT. I think that would be very interesting as well. So just to put that out there. Curious to get your thoughts on all of that. But for the actual matchups and stuff, we did get Nicole and going up against Charlotte and Alexa for those WWE Women's Tag Team. This is a very good match. I love the doll comparison at the beginning. That was a lot of fun too. The calling, doing the calling things, trying to get that numbers advantage to overcome Charlotte and Alexa, but wasn't quite enough. You have to bring your big guns, take down a team like them, and Alexa ends up hitting that sister Abigail to get the win. I thought this was a pretty good contest. Pretty intense. It felt like there for a minute the calling might actually have what it takes to take them down. So props to the calling, Tatum and Izzy to make that matchup look as even as it was. The Trick Williams and Carmelo Hayes and DIY match even better than the last one. All four men just showing up, showing out, showing why they were and are a staple of NXT when they were on the show. And then that ending with the Miz, that was chef's kiss. That was a great way to kind of tie what's going on in the current product, on SmackDown or excuse me, Raw, to kind of tie that all together. And so I love that. And then I think Trick and Carmelo, I think, is the right choice getting the win there. Hearing Johnny Gargano's Rebel Heart music, that got me. That's one of my probably most nostalgic ones for me personally. But yeah, love that ending, and yeah. The Tyler Breeze and Ethan Page match. Yeah, I thought this one was pretty good. I don't. I couldn't tell you the last time I've seen Tyler Breeze. I think probably, as you mentioned, when they were part of the Fashion Police. I remember how over that gimmick was. They just continue the silly segments every week, the investigations, if you will. Probably the last time, and that feels like that's probably been, feels like at least 5 years, right? Not sure off the top of my head, but it's been a while. But yeah, as you kind of alluded to, he hasn't missed a beat. But yeah, this was a good match as well. Felt like kind of similar to the other title match. Tyler Breeze felt like he was going to be able to take down Ethan Page, and obviously some ringside distractions for Wagner Jr. over there. It felt like that was going to all culminate to maybe have Tyler Breeze win a title, just to have one kind of shock win of the evening. But alas, it was not the case, and All Ego hits that twisted Gren to win, and still our NXT North American champion. So yeah, I thought this was a pretty good, pretty fun opening part of NXT here. Lots of unexpected faces and events, certainly lots of talking points. So yeah, curious to get your thoughts on all of that, William. I mean, KP.
I mean, I tried to do my best William Regal impression. Maybe it was really that good. But yeah, it was a lot of fun. Really, really good first half. Like, I was getting very nostalgic. Like you said, for hearing Rebel Heart, there's no way I can just like not smile through that. It was just a great moment, and it didn't really end there throughout the night either. There are moments that I'm just keen to talk about going forward. So let's get started with our second half then of NXT. We would then have the Grayson Waller effect. This was announced last week on last week's NXT. And he would be joined by the championship contenders for the NXT title match coming up at No Mercy. That would be Oba Femi and Ricky Saints. So Oba and Ricky sat on the opposite side of the ring with him. Grayson Waller, he's given it all that, as he always does. He basically starts off with Oba Femi. Oba says to Ricky that, he isn't anything special. He says that Ricky Saints is too busy looking ahead to being on Raw and SmackDown, whereas he himself, he's living and breathing the NXT Championship. He's got his priorities set. Ricky questions what Oba is without the title. He calls him pampered, basically saying how, he's essentially had a title over his shoulder ever since he got here. So, what are you without, a championship belt in your collection? Because we haven't really seen that much from Oba Femi, so it's a really good point there from Ricky Saints, to be fair. Ricky looks back to 8 years ago, where he tried to get into WWE, but unfortunately for himself, then he was rejected. And he compares that situation to then and now, and where he's the absolute Ricky Saints. So a lot has changed in those years, and he can look back on that and he sees it as a learning point. He didn't see it as a denial. He saw it more as opportunity to to really sort of invest himself and get better. And that's exactly what he did over the years. Trick Williams, he would make an appearance here just suddenly out of nowhere, as sort of Oba and Ricky are squaring up to each other in the ring. And Trick would basically say, Oba, you still got what I want, the NXT title. We've seen this how many times this year? The interactions between Trick and Oba Femi. We've had matches between the two of them, and it's always gone the way of Oba Femi. It's always been the case. But Grayson Waller, he gets up out of his seat, and, he's been quite quiet for most of the show here. He had a little bit at the start, and, then he just let Oba and Ricky go at it for a bit. But he gets up out of the chair, and he basically, light bulb goes off in his head. He gets an idea. He says, you know what? I'm going to go talk to Ava, and we're going to set up a match next week. It's going to be Oba Femi versus Trick Williams, and it's going to be title versus title. So, yeah, the winner of that one then will go on to face Ricky Saints at No Mercy. So, essentially, Ricky Saints is the number one contender, but Trick's jumped the line and will put his TNA Championship on the line against Obafemi for his NXT Championship next week. So, yeah, quite a crazy announcement there, very unexpected out of nowhere, to be honest. You said a moment ago, Nick, that lots of TNA stars throughout the night were complaining on social media, and it was brought up by Vic Joseph on a number of occasions. This is probably the biggest one I think that they were most annoyed about, I would say, from what Vic was saying during the main event. And obviously you can see why they would be as well. Trick just basically just to give it another chance to someone from NXT, arguably the top dog of the brand. I think he is. Trick will disagree with that though. To win the TNA Championship, so I can't see the TNA stars being too happy about that one. That sets up a very interesting match next week that I think could go a couple of ways. But moving on with the rest of our show here. We would then have Lexis King go into the ring, and obviously he's been feuding with Miles Bourne recently. It's been getting quite heated and personal between the two of them. He turns his attention towards the black and gold era, saying that era of NXT was, in fact, overrated. He says that era can't hold a candle to the wrestling ability of modern-day NXT, and you know those past stars that used to be here, they don't care about the fans anymore because they've moved on. They've gone on to do other things. Lexa says he's here. He's a star right here, right now. Before then, he looks back to the interactions he's had previously with Miles Bourne and his attack on him last week. We would then get the Prince coming out to the King. Finn Balor would come on down to the ring, and he would return with his classic entrance, the original one that you'd always used to have. And this would be a great moment for me personally as well. Just seeing the old Finn Balor back was a lovely breath of fresh air. This isn't Judgment Day Finn. This is the Prince Finn. This is NXT Finn, and this is the best Finn for me personally. He would literally just do his entrance. Lexis King almost like starstruck by the appeal of Balor. And whilst that's all happening, Miles Bourne sneakily just gets up behind Lexis King. He would lay him out, and that would allow Finn Balor to have an opportunity to hit a coup de grace and soak in the reception with Miles Bourne to end that segment. But yeah, it was a feel-good moment, this one. Great to see Balor back in the best way possible. And Lexis King and Miles Bourne continuing their beef between each other. Did everything right this segment. It was nostalgic, moves things forward. I thought it was great. And then in our main event, Charlotte Flair said at the start of the night, the women run NXT, and, well, they're the main event. What can you say? It's got Fatal Influence. It's got the NXT Women's Champion involved there, JC Jane, alongside her, her teammates Fallon Henley and Jasmine Nix. They take on the team of Lara Valkyria, Stephanie Vicaire, and Rhea Ripley. It was meant to be Tiffany Stratton in this matchup. I'm not entirely certain as to why Lyra just suddenly, spawned out of nowhere to be in this one. But I'm sure there's probably a reason for it that I just haven't got around to looking into just yet. But regardless, she was a great fit in the matchup as well. She got, obviously a part of NXT. So, naturally, she just sort of like slots in very simply. And, this was just a really fun matchup between the six women. It was great to see. Lots of tag team, action, blending together really well. Good teamwork between both teams in the end. And it gets to a point in the end where JC Jane, she's trying to flee from the match, trying to escape. And Lola Vice, the number one contender for the Women's NXT Championship, she appears, through the stage and basically just, forces JC to go back towards the ring. JC sort of like stuck between a rock and a hard place. Does she go into Rhea Ripley? Does she stay out with Lola Vice? And she eventually turns her back sort of thing on Lola. And by the time she turns around again, Lola hits her with a spinning back fist. That sort of like just sends her spiraling into the ring. And that would be the victory then for Rhea Ripley and her team as she would hit the Riptide to get the 1-2-3. But just a pretty standard mixed women's tag team match to end the show really here. It was good. It was fun. There was a great moment with Booker T on commentary and Stephanie Vicaire with the Devil's Kiss. Rhea Ripley also getting involved and doing her own one as well. It just hit all the right boxes. It was simple. It did what it did. It was nice. And it was a bit nostalgic as well for seeing some of the old girls back on NXT. Nick, what did you make of our second half? There's plenty to discuss here. We got that massive title match announced for next week. Whether you agree or disagree with that, whether you can theorize what's going to happen in that one as well. I think we can have a pretty solid idea about what's going to take place. But obviously that's going to be quite big. How great was Balor's entrance? It was a wonderful thing to see, and that tag match at the end of the night as well.
Yeah, lots of fun segments here on the second half. The Grayson Waller effect a bit was interesting in that, well, the crowd had been pretty hot for pretty much everyone and everything up until this point, but honestly, didn't care a ton for Grayson Waller and the show. Don't know if that was just kind of the intentional or not. Maybe the camera didn't quite pick up the crowd reaction as much as they had, but to me, it felt like they just didn't really care about this segment or particularly Grayson Waller. So kind of interesting there. But as for the Ricky Saints, Elba Femi kind of interactions, um, I didn't know that about Ricky Saints. I didn't know that he had once applied to WWE. So that was interesting. And then yeah, Obafemi not being without a title, kind of similar to Gunther, just not something you see. So interesting bit there. And then Trick quite, not having enough attention for the night, coming back to get that match set up by Grayson Waller. Interesting, and twofold. One that you mentioned already was Trick kind of jump on the line there, but two, and that it kind of seems out of nowhere. But it should be an interesting matchup if they actually let it go through, which I have my doubts on. But yeah, clearly playing a part in the TNA drama that we've seen throughout the night. But yeah, I thought this was at the very least topical and that it got everyone talking. But yeah, we'll have to wait and see next week kind of how that plays out. And yeah, speaking of not caring for someone too much, Lexus King, obviously, no one likes him as well. Getting to see the classic Finn Balor entrance, another bit of nostalgia there. Thinking of how great and how unstoppable he once was. And then Miles Bourne kind of taking advantage of having his attention on someone else as Alexis mentioned the lights out match, Finn Balor coming out at that exact moment. Great timing by the production team there. And Miles Bourne taking out Lexus King and celebrating with Finn Balor. Quite a moment there. And then the main event, of course, Fatal Influence going up against Lyra, Stephanie, and Rhea. As you all know, it was originally supposed to be Tiffany Stratton. Whether that injury is kayfabe or not, she was unable to compete. For one, I think Lyra is a better fit here anyway, so I was happy with the adjustment. Just hopefully all is well with Tiffany. Hopefully that's just a kayfabe bit with Nia coming back. Just feels about like, how sudden it was that adjustment that, maybe it's not, but we'll have to wait and see. For the actual match itself, yeah, I thought it was great for Fatal Influence to get that jump on the other team simply because they probably knew they were kind of in over their heads with the whole situation. But yeah, I thought this was a really fun 6-woman tag match, and everyone kind of gets in their bit. Of course, had to check in on Booker T. We see if he was all right with the in unison Devil's Kisses from Vakir and Rhea. That was a great moment as well. And then having JC try to kind of flee the scene to get stopped then by Lola Vice, who is her competitor for No Mercy. So I thought that was another great bit to kind of tie it into the current product. They did a little bit of that, throughout the night, which I thought was a nice little touch to it. But yeah, this is a great moment, and of course, Rhea to get that riptide there to end the show. Was never ever going to be any other way, right? The main stars were always going to win that one. But yeah, overall for me, how can you not rate this show highly? Whether you're an NXT, guy from day one like you are, or just more of a casual viewer like myself, it checked all the boxes for me. So I just assume it would do the same for you. Yeah, the TNA bit throughout the night was very interesting. Curious to see where they're kind of going to take that from there. And if that does it result in a war games, I'm all here. I'm here for it. I think that would be a ton of fun. So yeah, give this one episode a 9 out of 10. Of course, lots of fun, and look forward to the next time they do something similar.
Yeah, this was just a feel-good show, generally speaking, wasn't it? There was nothing overly bad about it. It was all a lot of fun. It was great to sort of like just delve into all the nostalgia, mix it with the modern day stuff. Yeah, it had a really good blend to it. It had a good pace, had a good vibe. In terms of my overall rating, I'd give it a 9 out of 10 as well. I think it was maybe just missing like a standout moment, and then it would have been an absolutely perfect show. But besides that, regardless of the fact, there was lots of things that were done really well here. And as a somebody who's watched NXT for over a decade, it was great to just just see bits of the past just blend into the present. And I couldn't help but smile the whole way through. It was a lot of fun to watch. And I think they should do this, not all the time, not that often, but maybe a little bit more often than once every what however many years it's been since the very beginning, like 13 14 years sort of thing. But regardless of the fact, I had a great time. It was a wonderful show. So everybody, that's been our reaction to NXT Homecoming for this week's episode of NXT. If you liked or disliked anything that we said here, please let us know in the comments. We'd love to hear what exactly your thoughts are on what we've said and about the show itself. If you liked what we're putting out here, please consider hitting a like on the video, subscribing to our channel, and keeping up with our future content. We've got loads of stuff coming out. It's a busy time for us. We're doing stuff all the time here, and just pumping it out constantly. So for now, this has been The Push with Nick and KP. We'll see you all in the next one. Take it easy, everybody, and goodbye for now.